Welcome to another episode of Woolooware High School's English Rules, where we look at what our students are learning in the classroom at the moment. Year 10 have been working through a unit on Shakespeare, William Shakespeare's tragedies, and some classes are reading the Tragedy of Macbeth. In last week's episode, we looked at the significant role of the witches, in bringing out the tragic hero Macbeth's hamartia, his tragic flaw of vaulting ambition, by prophesizing that he'll become promoted to the Thane of Cawdor and king hereafter. Now, he is seriously contemplating this, especially after he was promoted to the Thane of Cawdor. So he's seriously contemplating how he will become king. Now, his partner of greatness and wife, Lady Macbeth, knows her husband very, very well. She knows that he is too full of the milk of human kindness to catch the nearest way. The nearest way is for them to murder King Duncan. And she knows that he cannot plot a murder and then actually execute the murder to become king. So she is willing to supplement her strength for his weakness, for both of them to fulfill their ambitions. So we're going to look at the rise and demise of Lady Macbeth in 4 short scenes. And the first scene is Act 1, Scene 5, where she receives Macbeth's letter saying what happened with these witches, and they've prophesied this, and I've become the Thane of Cawdor. And it's an interesting scene because it is an amazing piece of poetry. William Shakespeare brings out so many images as she conjures up all these evil spirits for her to become a brutal and ruthless person to fulfill these ambitions. Let's have a look. We immediately know something terrible is going to happen to King Duncan through the symbolism and foreboding. The raven is a black messenger bird that is hoarsely announcing something terrible. The fatal entrance of King Duncan will occur while he's staying overnight under my battlements in the Macbeth castle. And then Lady Macbeth conjures up all these evil spirits and asks them to extinguish all her femininity in one of her most famous lines, "Unsex me here," and replace it with cruelty, and she means direst cruelty. And she asks for the thickening of her blood to stop the access and passage to remorse and any conscious attack. She also wants these evil spirits to replace the milk in her breasts with poison. Pretty extreme, we say, but this is what it'll take to fulfill their ambitions. And she knows what she and her husband are about to do is wrong, fell purpose. And this is why Lady Macbeth wants thick night, dun smoke of hell, blanket of the dark, not to be able to see who is about to be murdered. And no one else to see, of course, too. And not even divine intervention to halt them. As you can see, Lady Macbeth knows her husband too well, and she knows his weaknesses. So she is willing to extinguish everything about her personality to become this ruthless and brutal person for them to fulfill their ambitions. And as she sort of foresaw, he is really unstable. By Act 1, Scene 7, he is having second thoughts. We shall proceed no further in this business. And she's going to need some very strong persuasion to bring him back to the plan. So let's have a look at Act 1, Scene 7 and how she does this. After questioning his love for her, Lady Macbeth is questioning her husband's masculinity. Where has this beast of a man who initially told her about the prophecies and the intent in fulfilling them? Back then he was a man, but what's happened? What has changed his heart now that unmakes him implying cowardice and weakness? And to get a point across, she needs an extreme comparison. And she uses the contrast of this motherly image of tender and willing and love of giving suck to a baby, with her ruthless murder of the baby itself by plucked and dashed the brains out to highlight that she would do anything. And she means anything once she's committed to a plan such as the murder of King Duncan. But does this strong persuasion have the desired effect? Of course. because Macbeth returns to the plan. Now he is meant to stab King Duncan to death and then smudge the drunken and sleeping attendants to the king, smudge them with blood, leave the daggers with them and return to Lady Macbeth. Simple, but what does he do? He returns with the daggers. So we're going to fast forward now to Act 2, Scene 2, where he's returned with the daggers and he's not going to go back to place these daggers on the attendants sleeping who are drunk. And it's Lady Macbeth who has to pick up the pieces. So let's have a look at how she describes her husband. Let's pick up when she returns and she cannot believe how scared Macbeth is. She uses a simile to compare the dead and the sleepers as mere pictures, as there is nothing to fear. And the metaphor of a scared child fearing and paying a devil to describe Macbeth's unsteadiness and weakness, infirm of purpose. And she uses the symbolism of white to show how ashamed and disgusted she is at her husband's fear. And I love the way she uses water, which represents cleansing, to understate the murder by saying a little bit of water will wash away everything. And finally, she is so disappointed with the assonance of the O in the final sentence and her husband being lost in his regret and guilt for murdering King Duncan. Her guidance is to be watchers, to appear to know nothing about the regicide. Okay, so that's the important theme of appearances versus reality. We can see that it's Lady Macbeth that's keeping everything together. And there's a great scene after Macbeth orders the murder of Banquo, and Banquo's ghost appears at a banquet with all these guests, and Macbeth is the only person who can see the ghost, and he loses it. And it's again Lady Macbeth who has to keep it together and settle the guests because they're questioning why is he acting so strangely and saying all these things. So after this point, we don't see Lady Macbeth. She resurfaces in Act 5, Scene 1, where her fears, her own fears, resurface. And she has been plagued by guilt so much that she's gone mad. So this is a stark contrast to the lady that we've known up to this point. So let's have a look at her madness and how her guilt has really caught up to her. While sleepwalking, Lady Macbeth is constantly rubbing her hands. The spot and blood on her hands, which symbolise her guilt. That King Duncan had so much blood in him, it doesn't stop. So that's why she's constantly rubbing her hands and trying to get rid of the blood. And the rhetorical question, what will these hands never be clean, captures her constant torment and turmoil. And where did all her strength and evil go? In an earlier scene, Lady Macbeth understated the crime, needing only a little bit of water to wash away the guilt. Now the hyperbole, all the perfumes of Arabia, cannot take away the stench of blood on her hands. She asked for evil spirits, the dullest smokes of hell, and now hell is murky. Wow, talk about Lady Macbeth's downfall. Wasn't it she who kept everything under control and under wraps? And yet now her fears and her guilt have caught up to her and she's gone mad. Shortly after this, she passes away, most likely a suicide, okay? And at the end, when Malcolm regains the throne, and Macbeth is killed, Malcolm calls her a fiend-like queen, someone very, very evil. So if Macbeth is a didactic text, okay, teaching audiences what is good and what is bad, well, Lady Macbeth falls into the category of being evil, right? So great rise and demise of Lady Macbeth. Next week we'll be looking at our tragic hero, Macbeth himself, and I look forward to seeing you next week. Thank you for watching, and I hope I've made it a little bit easier for you to understand the complex character of Lady Macbeth.